Can the dearly departed communicate with us from beyond the grave? Maybe, maybe not. No one really knows for sure. That's why you need an estate plan. I'm Wes Wood, the income guy and founder and president of Wood Financial Group. And for nearly 20 years, I specialize in helping hardworking Tennesseans just like you reach their financial retirement goals through income-based financial strategies. And if you're looking for the right solutions to achieve your own financial goals, I can help. Just reach out to me directly at retiretv.com now or anytime after the show, or by calling 855-776-0614. Now, no one really knows exactly what happens after you pass away. I know I have my beliefs, you have your own beliefs, and they're all very personal. But what we do know is that for those that are left behind, death brings grief, adjustment, and oftentimes a lot of work. And it's a difficult time, but it's always more difficult when the loved one failed to convey their wishes ahead of time. That's one important goal of estate planning. Unfortunately, far too many people neglect this important process, and that comes with a variety of reasons. And today we'll talk about why some of those reasons and why it's so important to explore the whats, the whys, and hows of estate planning. And today we'll talk about what estate planning is and isn't, why estate planning is so important no matter who you are, and how estate planning helps protect and grow your wealth while you're still alive. And again, joining us on this week's show is David Scranton. David is an investing for income specialist with over 30 years of experience. He's also a best-selling author and a television host. But first, let's talk about what's involved in planning for an estate. Many people think estate planning is only for the wealthy. It calls to mind mansions and sprawling properties with names like Windy Oaks. You might think billionaires have estates, but all I have is a house, a couple of cars, my boat. Maybe you have a little vacation cabin in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and perhaps you've got that baseball card collection. Maybe you have some of that silver that mom left behind. Plus, perhaps an old Martin guitar, that could be possibly worth something, right? Well, the reality is all of that is a part of your estate, along with your monetary assets. And don't let the hoity-toity term fool you. If you've accumulated assets, you need an estate plan. Another misconception is that estate planning covers only what happens to your stuff after you pass away. But the reality is, estate planning is an important part of protecting, preserving, and accumulating your assets while you're still alive. And I'll talk more later about that in this show. But right now, let's break down some of the contents of an estate plan, because there's no one-size-fits-all approach. And typically, an estate plan may include some of the following. One is a financial power of attorney. And what a financial power of attorney is a legal document that gives someone that you trust the authority to handle your financial affairs if you're unable to. Like pay your bills, write checks, buy and sell assets, and so forth and so on. The second thing, your last will and testament, or perhaps a living trust. You probably already know what a last will and testament is. And what it does is it specifies how you want your assets distributed after you pass away and to whom. And if you still have young children, you can also name a guardian for them in that will. But unfortunately, according to one survey, over 57% of Americans don't even have a will or its alternative, a living trust. And that's really unfortunate. Now, a trust, that's where you name a trustee to manage your affairs after you pass away. What it basically does is gives you more flexibility how and when your assets are going to be distributed. Number 3 is a healthcare power of attorney. It's a legal document that appoints someone to make medical decisions for you in the event that you become incapacitated. And finally, your estate plan should probably include a living will, also known as an advanced medical directive. It lets you spell out exactly what you want to have happen for your end-of-life treatment, what you do and you don't want to have happen to you in the event that you become terminally ill or unconscious. Now, naturally, all these things can be very difficult to talk about. That's another reason some people neglect and delay with estate planning. But what's usually more difficult is the additional grief and frustration you leave behind for your loved ones by not having an estate planned. And I'm going to talk more about that shortly, about how an estate plan can benefit your broader retirement income strategy as well. But also visit me at retiretv.com to receive your free estate planning report. It's a part of your retirement income kit as well. The report includes mistakes that you could be making right now within your estate plan. And you don't want to wait on this at all. So visit me at retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614 to receive your free retirement income kit and estate planning report. But right now, let's welcome our guest, David Scranton. David is the founder of Sound Income Strategies and the Retirement Income Store. Hey Dave, thanks for being back with me this week.
Oh, great to be here, Wes. You know, one of the most common misconceptions that I find is people think, okay, if I'm part of that 57% that doesn't have a will or doesn't have a trust, does that mean when I die, all my assets go to the state? And of course, that's not true. It's not quite that bad, but it's not really that much better either, right?
You're correct. If you don't have a will or any type of estate plan at all, and you pass away, it's called that your assets go into intestate. And every state varies with this, but basically the process is probate. So the courts are going to appoint a legal representative, a personal representative, to determine how these assets are going to be distributed. And I could go on and on and on what that means, but it can create a lot of issues. Matter of fact, one of the biggest problems is here in the state of Tennessee. If you're married and have children and you pass away, you don't have a will or anything on file or written, what can happen is that some of your assets go to your surviving spouse, but then some of your assets actually go to your living children. And from my conversations with clients, that's normally not what they want to have happen. They want to make sure that their assets travel from them to their husband or wife, whoever is still living when they pass away.
Gosh, think about it, Wes, right? What are the chances that preset will the state of Tennessee has for a particular individual is exactly where they want their money to go? I mean, it's pretty much slim and none, right?
That's right, and you really just don't want to leave it to the courts or to the state to determine how your assets are paid out by any stretch of the imagination. And David, hey, don't go away. We're going to talk a little bit more later in the show, but coming up after the break, we're going to talk about some of the possible consequences you should know about if you ignore your estate plan. I'm Wes Wood, and you're watching the Retirement Income Show, and we'll be right back after this break.
Retirement accounts like 401ks and IRAs are great tools to save for retirement. They offer tax advantages to help keep more money in your pocket. But withdrawing money from your accounts can have a huge impact on your tax liability. Take money from the right account at the right time and you could minimize it. But taking money from the wrong account at the wrong time could result in a big tax burden. If you're not sure what you should do with your 401k in retirement, visit retiretv.com to schedule a free, no-obligation conversation with Wes Wood and Wood Financial Group.
I'm David Scranton. During my career, I found that most baby boomers have done a great job growing their retirement savings, yet many don't know how to convert their savings into steady income. And that is why I built the Retirement Income Store, to help hardworking Americans preserve their assets and establish steady streams of income.
If you're 55 or older, please claim our free Retirement Income Kit, chock full of information you need to know to get steady income during your retirement. Call 866-714-7377, online at theretirementinComeStore.com.
Welcome back. I'm Wes Wood, the Income Guy, and today we're exploring the whats, whys, and hows of estate planning. Great to have you. I'm glad you joined me this week. And so far, we've covered what an estate plan is and what's in it. Now let's talk more about why you need to have one. Here's a question for you. What do Picasso, Abe Lincoln, and the rock star Prince all have in common? You probably already guessed it. They all died without leaving a will. And as you might remember, the artist Prince died just 5 years ago at the age of 57 years old. And when he passed away, his estate was worth over $100 million. And it still has not been settled after 5 years. And for the past 5 years, his siblings have been haggling over their share of the assets. And of course, that means once the estate is finally settled, all the lawyers that were involved are going to get their sizable shares as well. Now, Prince's example is a perfect one of the kind of financial and emotional trauma a family can suffer when you ignore estate planning. It can happen even if you don't have a very large fortune, like $100 million. Families have been torn apart by arguments over cheap jewelry, dolls, furniture, and other things with mostly sentimental value. And once the courts get involved to settle these disputes, the financial toll really begins to mount and it gets extremely expensive. It's unlikely you'll be able to communicate all your wishes after you pass away. So what it's important to do is spell them out ahead of time in ways that are legally binding. It's important not just to do it for your family, but also do it for yourself. And think about it this way. An advisor who specializes in retirement income can help you make the right financial decisions to protect your asset. But a good estate planning attorney can help you make the right legal decisions as well to protect your estate. That's just as important because bad decisions can be costly. For example, you might think that designating a beneficiary is the same thing as putting a child on an asset. It is not. The first one is typically part of estate planning. The second, putting a name or a child on an asset, is a potentially dangerous move that you should probably avoid. That's because if the child ever got divorced or sued or anything like that, half of the assets would belong to his or her spouse in that divorce. And if the child ever got sued, the assets would be subject to collection and litigation. And that's just one example. There are a number of legal mistakes that could jeopardize your estate. And by estate, I am again simply meaning and talking about your collective assets, whatever they may be worth. You want to protect them both legally and financially for the good of your family after you're gone, but also for the good of yourself while you're still around. And that's the whole point of estate planning. But how exactly do you go about doing this? I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment, but you can also learn more with our free estate planning report. It's included in your retirement income kit, and to get it, just go to retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614 to request your free income kit and estate planning report. Now, let's welcome back our income specialist, Dave Scranton, on today's show. Welcome back, Dave.
Great, Wes. Thank you. You know, you're so right that when you say that it's not about something that's just for the wealthy. I mean, sometimes it's things that aren't worth a lot of monetary value, but they have a lot of sentimental value. And I know you've been doing this long enough where, you know, I'm sure you have some incredible client stories where people have thought about things that most people would think are trivial, but they're important sentimentally to them.
Yeah, that's right, Dave. I've seen a lot of cases. I've seen fallouts over the simplest things like even a snow globe. Personally, I've seen it in my family. I'll never forget just a few years back when my wife's grandmother passed away. My wife has a sister, an older sister and a younger brother, and their grandmother wore a ring on her right hand. And you would have thought this ring to them was worth $1 million. Now, if I were to go pawn this ring off, maybe get $50 for it, but it had such sentimental value to them. And unfortunately, there was nothing listed in her estate plan that said who this ring is going to go to. So what happened? My wife and her sister kind of fought like cats and dogs over this ring and didn't talk for quite some time. Now, since then, they've reconciled and now they trade the ring just about every other Christmas there. So it all worked out in the end. But there's a lot of other stories where families are still arguing years and years after somebody has passed away over just the silliest things.
Well, it's funny, you could say all's well that ends well, but really not, because it caused anguish in the family. And I know none of your viewers want to cause anguish in the family, even if just for a few months before things get settled out. So do you think it's these personal decisions that sometimes are difficult to make, and therefore sometimes the reason why maybe people procrastinate so much in designing an estate plan?
Yeah, that's probably it. You nailed it. I have a lot of people that come in that have been retired for years, and they're so happy they're finally getting their estate plan. And I'll ask them, hey, just curious, but what took you so long to get this thing knocked out? And they just didn't really want to deal with it or think about it. It's not anything that's very fun to talk about with your family, but it is necessary. And once somebody has actually sat down and knocked out that estate plan after procrastinating for a while, you should see the relief on their face. They're just happy that they've gotten it knocked out because they know their family is going to be in a much better shape in the event that they pass away.
Sure. And so it sounds like the cash investments are often the easiest decisions to make in terms of where they go. And you mentioned beneficiary designations, but not all accounts allow beneficiary designations. So you mind sharing which ones do allow you to just simply, boom, snap a finger and put a beneficiary on them?
Yep. Yeah, beneficiaries are great. So beneficiaries can be put on most financial assets, meaning bank accounts. And normally a bank account is like TOD or POD, which stands for transfer on death or payable on death, depending on the bank or the credit union. Also, IRAs have beneficiaries where you could put primary beneficiaries, contingent beneficiaries, a word called per stirpes, divided equally, which we won't go too far into that today and what that is. Life insurance policies, annuities, which are contracts offered by insurance companies. You can put beneficiaries on any of those assets. But when you do put beneficiaries, you definitely want to be making sure that they are up to date and in good order. Because I've seen beneficiaries that have been out of date where actually ex-spouses have been left on accounts. And thank goodness we discover it before anything happens to our client. But you can imagine who would have received that asset if we didn't catch it when we were reviewing those beneficiaries. But yes, that's a very powerful tool that can be used for an estate plan.
Great.
And Dave, hey, thanks again, and stay with us, and we'll get back with you in just a few minutes. But coming back after the break, we're going to talk about how to create your estate plan in conjunction with your broader retirement income strategy. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Wes Wood, founder of Wood Financial Group. Did you know that one simple mistake can derail your retirement plan? Could you be making that mistake right now? By not making the shift from growth-based to income-based investing, you could be setting up your retirement plan to fail. If you're at or near retirement age, time is not on your side. One market correction could wipe out your life savings. Make the switch today so you can preserve your assets and generate retirement income you can count on. Visit retiretv.com to download your free retirement income kit from Wood Financial Group. Welcome back. I'm Wes Wood, the Income Guy. Thanks for tuning in. We're talking about the what's, whys, and hows of estate planning. We've covered a lot about the what's and the whys. Now let's talk about the how. You know, estate planning should include an honest family discussion. It doesn't necessarily have to start there, but those who will be affected by your estate plan should be told how they're going to be affected at some point during the process. And when it comes to physical assets, you may want to ask directly who wants to receive what. You may also want to talk about things with your family and children and family members would feel most comfortable in certain roles and what they need to partake in. Maybe one child is more suited for being your healthcare power of attorney, while another one is a better choice for your financial power of attorney. Naturally, these are complicated legal matters. So at some point, you will need to have a legal professional involved in this process. The good news is that many income specialists work in coordination with estate planning attorneys on behalf of their mutual clients. In fact, they can often help you find an attorney that's right for you to help prepare these documents and make sure your estate plan is in good order. But this brings up another important point. For most people, the right time to start thinking about an estate plan is the same time you need to start creating a financial plan to meet your retirement goals. And generally, that means about 10 years or so from retirement. Remember Prince? When he passed away, he was only 57 years old without an estate plan, and that was just 5 years ago. Ideally, he should have worked with an estate planning attorney and his financial advisor to create a plan at least a couple of years before he passed away. And that would have probably prevented all this illegal and emotional turmoil his family has been tangling with and will tangle with probably for many years to come. The point is, estate planning isn't a thing you want to wait until you're confined to a nursing home or a hospital bed, or you've been diagnosed with a terrible illness. It's a step you want to take to prepare for all those possibilities and to help make sure your assets are legally protected along the way. Even if you're only considering retiring within 10 years, finding a financial advisor qualified to help you meet your retirement goals and income needs is a great first step in this process. Again, he or she can likely put you in touch with a qualified estate planning attorney in your area, perhaps even in their office, and together they can help coordinate an overall plan. And income-based advisors and estate planning attorneys both focus on protection. Their goal is to help protect you from many risks and challenges unique to retirement, both in legal matters and also, of course, in financial matters as well. You may not consider yourself old yet, and you may never consider yourself old, and of course that's great, but you will be able to enjoy your life at any age if you prepare now. First, that means identifying your retirement goals and switching your retirement focus to retirement income. But it also means understanding the what's, whys, and how's of estate planning and taking action sooner rather than later. If you need this help to get started with your estate plan, visit us at retiretv.com and you'll receive your free estate planning report as a part of the Retirement Income Kit. Now, this report explains common mistakes you could be making right now with your estate plan. So again, visit us at retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614 to get your free income kit. Now, let's welcome back our guest and income specialist and founder of the Retirement Income Store, David Scranton. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Wes, you make a great point. I think a lot of people think that, gee, I'm going to take my oldest son or my oldest daughter, and that person is going to be the executor of my will, maybe the trustee of my trust, my durable power of attorney, my healthcare agent. But the reality is it doesn't all have to be one person. Different people might be suited to different roles. So I was glad to hear you say that, because I think a lot of people just don't think that way necessarily.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely does not have to be one person to handle everything by any stretch of the imagination. So, you could be sitting there and you have a nurse as perhaps a daughter or son, and they're your healthcare power of attorney, because obviously they're better suited for healthcare decisions. Where perhaps you have a son or a daughter that's a banker, and obviously they'd be better suited to be your financial power of attorney. So definitely, you don't have to feel obligated to pick just one child or one person to handle all those complex affairs. It could be anybody that's well suited to help in that matter.
Yeah, and I agree this concept of not trying it at home alone, because there's a lot of things you could enter into a contract, and if you write the contract wrong, ultimately you sit in front of the judge, you say, well, that's not what I meant. But when you're talking about a will or a trust, you can't do that. So if you've made a mistake, it's too late to fix it. But like you said, this isn't a set it and forget it thing either. So how does one know when he or she needs to review their estate planning documents?
Well, rule of thumb is every 5 to 10 years, or if there's been a major life-changing event. Obviously, if somebody close to you has passed away and they're listed in the wills or the trust or whatever documents you may have. Also, if you need to update your executors or your trustees, because maybe that person that you appointed now is not who you want to handle those affairs. But that's not all. There's a lot of other reasons that you need to update those documents.
And the living will especially, Wes, right? That's got to be done more frequently if you want a doctor to accept your instructions.
That's right. If you have a living will that's maybe more than 5 years old, and it's presented to a doctor may say, well, this living will is 6-7 years old. I don't know if I can accept this, because maybe that's not their wishes anymore. Maybe they don't want the plug to be pulled, so to speak. So definitely need to get those updated on a more often basis. So it's definitely a good idea, even if you already have an estate plan or you think you do, to always have it reviewed and looked over.
I think we had a little bit of time left, and you haven't really talked a lot about living trust yet. So where does the living trust fit into this whole picture of estate planning?
Yeah, well, a living trust is just another great estate planning tool. It's a tool that can be used to help avoid the probate process. Now, that can be a little bit more complex, a little bit more expensive on the front end to set up, but from my experience, people that have had living trusts have been much more confident to know that their assets are going to go who they want to, because it's not going to get stuck in the probate process. And another thing that a living trust can do is what we call control past the grave. So perhaps you have somebody, or one of our watchers have somebody that's in their family that they want to receive some assets, but they're concerned that perhaps that person that's going to receive the assets is not responsible with the money. So you can structure it to be paid out over a certain time period, and what we call have more control past the grave. But again, they're fantastic vehicles. And well, Dave, thanks again for joining me again this week. Again, I'm Wes Wood, the Income Guy. Thank you for watching. And if you have any questions about anything we've covered on today's show, please reach out to me at retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614. Thanks, and we'll see you again next week.